Good evening to everyone. Hi sir, hi classmates. Since our topic is virtual in nature, I, your speaker, will also be virtual. To continue with our report on VM, tonight I will discuss the following: memory mapped I/O, how to manage kernel memory. Aside from the major decisions that we make for a paging system, which were already discussed by my colleagues, I will point out several other considerations as well. Lastly, I will brief you with the implementation of paging system in Windows and Solaris operating systems. Earlier, the speaker before me discussed about memory mapped file input-output, describing a mechanism that allows file I/O operations to be treated as routine memory access by mapping a disk block to a page in memory. In some devices, ranges of memory addresses are set aside and are mapped to its registers. For example, I/O controllers includes registers to hold commands and the data being transferred. As an illustration, the CPU transfers data in devices by reading and writing to a few of its device registers called an I/O port. To send out a long string of bytes through a memory-mapped serial port, the CPU writes one data byte to its data register and sets a bit in the control register to signal that the byte is available. The devices take the data byte and then clears the bit in control register to signal that it is ready for the next byte. Then the CPU can transfer the next byte. This method has the advantage where I/O devices will have fast response times. Next, let us explore how kernel memory is being handled. I will discuss two strategies. One, the body system. Second, slab allocation. Allocating memory is treated differently from user memory. When a process running in user mode requests additional memory, pages are allocated from a list of free page frames maintained by the kernel. This is typically populated using page replacement algorithm and most likely contains free pages scattered throughout physical memory. There are two primary reasons for this method. One, memory requests for structures of varying sizes, and as a result, the kernel must use memory conservatively and attempt to minimize waste due to fragmentation. Another reason, some kernel memory needs to be contiguous. It means that pages allocated to user mode processes do not necessarily have to be in contiguous physical memory. However, certain hardware devices interact directly with physical memory without the benefit of a virtual memory interface and consequently may require memory residing in physical contiguous pages. Now for our first strategy in allocating kernel memory, we have the body system. It is the allocation of memory from fixed segment consisting of physically contiguous pages. It's like this. Memory allocated using power of 2 allocator. It satisfies requests in units sized as power of 2, requests rounded up to next higher power of 2, and when smaller allocation needed than is available, currently chunk split into two bodies of next lower power of 2, and it continues until appropriate size chunk is available. In this figure, for example, kernel requests 21 KB of memory. So CL 32 KB is the segment allocated to the 21 KB request. It has the advantage to quickly coalesce. That means CL plus CR is equal to 64 KB going up until the original 256 KB. Drawback here is fragmentation. For example, a 35 KB request can only be satisfied with a 64 KB segment, its next higher power of 2. Our next strategy for allocating kernel memory is slab allocation. Slab is one or more physical contiguous pages. It has cache that consists of one or more slabs. The cache representing semaphore stores instances of semaphore objects. The cache representing processes descriptors stores instances of process descriptor objects, and so forth. Now there's a single cache for each unique kernel data structure, wherein each cache filled with objects. These objects are instantiations of the data structure. The slab allocator. The figure shows here a relationship among slabs, caches, and objects. In the figure, there are two kernel objects, 3 KB in size, and another 3 objects, 7 KB in size each stored in a separate cache. The slab algorithm uses caches to store kernel objects. When cache created, filled with objects marked as free. When structures stored, objects are marked as used. If slab is full of used objects, next object allocated from empty slab. If no empty slab, new slab allocated. Here, the benefits include no fragmentation, fast memory satisfaction. Let us see the slab allocator in Linux. Note, in Linux, a process descriptor is of type struct task struct. Now, when a Linux kernel creates a new task, it requests the necessary memory for the task struct object from its cache, and then the cache will fulfill the request using a struct task struct object that has already been allocated in a slab and is marked as free. Linux tab can be in 3 possible states: full, meaning all used; empty, all free; or partial, mix of free and used. Again, the method in Linux is like this. Upon request, the slab allocator first attempts to satisfy the request with a free object in a partial slab. And if none exists, a free object is assigned from an empty slab. If no empty slabs are available, a new slab is allocated from contiguous physical pages and assigned to a cache. Memory for the object is allocated from this stub. More with Linux. By the way, slab started in Solaris 2.4 kernel, but now widespread for both kernel mode and user memory in various operating systems. In Linux 2.2, it had slab, but now has both slub and slab allocators. Slub for systems with limited memory, and SLUB is performance optimized SLUB. Now let's dive into the other considerations. The major decisions that we make for a paging system are the selections of a replacement algorithm, an allocation policy in the kernel memory. They were discussed earlier. Let's look into the following: pre-paging, page size, TLB reach, inverted page tables, program structure, input-output interlock, and page locking. First, pre-paging. It is an obvious property of pure demand paging that large number of page faults occur when a process is started. This situation results from trying to get the initial locality into memory. Now, to reduce the large number of faults that occur at a process startup, we implement pre-paging. It is an attempt to prevent this high level of initial paging. So we prepare all or some of the pages a process will need before they are referenced. But if pre-paged pages are unused, I/O and memory were wasted. Let's assume S pages are pre-paged and alpha, a fraction of the pages used. Alpha here greater than or equal to 0 but less than equal to 1. The question is the cost of S times alpha save page faults, or greater than or less than the cost of pre-paging S times 1 minus alpha unnecessary pages? As alpha here nears 0, pre-paging loses. But as alpha nears 1, pre-paging wins. Next consideration, page size. Sometimes OS designers have a choice for page size, especially if running on CPU-built CPU. Page size selection must take into consideration the following: fragmentation, page table size, resolution, I/O overhead, number of page faults, locality, TLB size, and effectiveness. Here, if we decrease the page size, it increases the number of pages and hence the size of the page table. With a smaller page size, then we have a better resolution, allowing us to isolate only the memory that is actually needed. The historical trend is towards larger page sizes, even for mobile systems. Indeed, the first edition of OS Concepts, way back 1983, used 4096 bytes as the upper bound on page sizes. And this value was the most common page size also in way back 1990. In modern systems, they use now larger page sizes. Take note, page size always power of 2, and it's usually in the range of 2 to the 12 to 2 to the 22. Next, the TLB. The transfer look-aside buffer, it is a cache that memory management hardware use to improve virtual address translation speed. Now, when you say TLB reach, it is the amount of memory accessible from the TLB. And it has this formula, TLB size times page size. And ideally, the working set of each process is stored in TLB. Otherwise, there is a high degree of page faults. And increasing the page size will also increase fragmentation, as not all applications require a larger page size. And as we provide multiple page sizes, this allows applications that require larger page sizes the opportunity to use them without an increase in fragmentation. Next, inverted page tables. Page tables are made to reduce the amount of physical memory needed to track virtual to physical address translations. And demand paging requires this information to process page faults. Next consideration, the program structure. Careful selection of data structures and programming structures can increase locality and hence lower the page fault rate and the number of pages. Take a look at this illustration. In this variable declaration, we have an array of 128 rows and 128 columns. Each row is stored in one page. Program 1 here generates 128 by 128, that would be 16,384 page faults. It's because the process here in program 1 is first row, and then one column goes to second row, one column. It hops row by row and then going back to the first row. As compared to program 2, you have 128 page faults only because you finish the zero assignment row by row. The last consideration is the I/O interlock. With I/O interlock, pages must sometimes be locked into memory. For example, a controller for a USB storage is generally given the number of bytes to transfer a memory address for the buffer. That's what the figure is about. And when the transfer is complete, the CPU is interrupted. Another case is pinning of pages to lock into memory. An illustration here is a database process wanting to manage a chunk of memory. For example, moving blocks between disk and memory itself because it has the best knowledge of how it is going to use its data. But pinning is prone to abuse. That's why an application frequently requires special privileges to make such a request. Now let's check the different operating systems. First, Windows. Windows uses demand paging with clustering. Clustering brings in pages, the faulting page, including its surrounding, and processes are assigned working set minimum and working set maximum. Working set minimum, it's the minimum number of pages the process is guaranteed to have in memory. And a process may be assigned as many, up to the working set maximum. And when the amount of free memory in the system falls below a threshold, automatic working set trimming is performed. And here, working set trimming simply removes pages from processes that have pages in excess of their working set minimum. Next is Solaris. Solaris maintains a list of free pages to assign faulting processes. And we have these following thresholds. Lots free, it's a threshold parameter, the amount of free memory to begin paging. Des free, it's a threshold parameter to increase paging. And min free, the threshold parameter to begin swapping. Solaris paging is performed by page-out process, and a page-out scan pages using modified clock algorithm. Scan rate is the rate at which pages are scanned. This ranges from slow scan to fast scan. Page-out is called more frequently depending upon the amount of free memory available. And priority paging, this gives priority to process code pages. This figure here shows the behavior of Solaris page scanner. As it goes near mean free, page out called frequently at a faster rate. Opposite, going to lots free, it will be at a lower rate of page scanning. And that ends our report on virtual memory. Thank you.